The boy didn't cry when he said it. That was what stayed with her the most. He walked through the door, dropped his backpack in its usual spot, and instead of heading for the kitchen like he always did, he came straight to her. He wrapped his arms around her waist, tight but careful, like he was holding himself together, and pressed his face into her sweater. They ate at a restaurant, he whispered, his breath warm against the fabric. I waited in the car for 2 hours. She didn't pull away, she didn't ask which restaurant, whose car, or where the keys were. She could feel how fragile the moment was, how easily the words might disappear if she pushed too hard. So she just held him until his shoulders finally relaxed. Okay, she said once, not comfort, just a marker. After he went to his room, she stood in the hallway and took in details she would later replay again and again. How the house felt loud, the hum of the vent, the steady click of the clock. She washed her hands even though they weren't dirty, slipped on her shoes without sitting down, grabbed her keys. The drive took 12 minutes. She knew because she'd driven it countless times. Shared custody had turned her life into a map of routines. The streets were familiar enough that she didn't have to think. Her thoughts came in broken pieces anyway. 2 hours, locked car, restaurant. She remembered all the moments she had brushed aside before. He's so quiet we forgot he was there. He didn't complain. You know how he is. She remembered saying thank you when she really meant please do better. The house came into view, lights on, cars in the driveway, normal. She parked and walked in without knocking. The door was unlocked like always. It used to feel like trust. They were in the kitchen. Wine glasses sat on the counter, and a bakery bag lay open, sugar still fresh in the air. The conversation stopped when they saw her. Oh. Hey, one of them said. Everything okay? She didn't raise her voice. She didn't sit down. She took out her phone and placed it on the counter between them. Recording already on. I'm not here to argue, she said. I'm here to document. The word landed heavier than any accusation. They all started talking at once, confusion, interruptions, explanations piling over each other. She lifted one hand, calm but firm. My son was left alone in a car for approximately 2 hours, she said, her voice even, almost instructional. I'm not asking for your version right now, this is dramatic. One of them said. He was safe. She nodded once, like she was acknowledging a point in a meeting. That's something an investigator can determine. The word investigator changed the room. She didn't threaten. She didn't list consequences. She did something simpler. She called the police non-emergency line and put it on speaker. Hello, she said when someone answered. I'm reporting a potential child neglect incident. I have reason to believe my 8-year-old was left unattended in a vehicle for an extended period earlier today. The silence behind her was total. No shouting, no denial. Just the sharp sound of a glass being set down to hard. The dispatcher asked questions. She answered plainly. Time, location, names, no extra details, no emotion layered on top. She didn't need to add anything. When the call ended, no one spoke for several seconds. You didn't have to do that. One of them said finally, the words thin and tight. She looked at them then, not angry, but focused, the way she read contracts. And fine print. I did, she said, because now there's a record. The officers arrived quickly. They were polite, calm. They asked the same questions again and wrote everything down. They looked at the driveway, the car, the back seat. No one was arrested. No one was handcuffed. The authority in the room was quieter than television ever made it seem. Procedural, unmistakable, heavy in its calm. Child Protective Services followed up the next morning. That part moved slowly, the way paperwork always does. Phone calls, notes, a visit, recommendations. The other parents swung back and forth between apology and anger. We didn't think, they said. We've raised kids. You went nuclear. She didn't respond to most of it. At home, she kept life steady. Dinner, homework, bath time. She didn't ask her son to retell anything. She noticed he sat closer to her on the couch now, knees pulled in, eyes on the screen but his attention somewhere else. One night he asked, am I in trouble? She shook her head. No. Are they mad at me? She thought carefully. Before answering, they're dealing with consequences, she said. That's not the same thing. He seemed to accept that. Weeks later, the custody schedule changed, not permanently. Under review was a phrase, but enough to shift the rhythm of their lives. School staff were notified. Drop-offs adjusted. Everything gained a layer of quiet observation. Through mutual acquaintances, she heard she was being called difficult, unforgiving. Someone said she had overreacted. She didn't correct them. Some nights, lying awake, she wondered if there had been another way. A conversation, a warning, one more chance. Then she remembered the whisper, the practiced silence, the way an 8-year-old learned how to wait. The record existed now. The boundary was no longer a suggestion. Nothing felt like a victory. There was no real relief, just a steady sense that something necessary had been put back where it belonged. Even if the cost was higher than she wanted, when she tucked her son in at night, he hugged her the way he used to quick and loose before. Turning toward sleep, she paused in the doorway and looked at him, safe, asleep. Ordinary in the best way. She didn't know how things would turn out in the long run. Relationships might break, trust might never fully return, but some things, once named and documented, could no longer be brushed aside. And she knew that would have to be enough.